Today I'm speaking with Kimberly Williams, HR Chief. Kimberly shares some excellent tips about how to be an advocate for yourself in a toxic workplace environment. Please listen in and follow Kimberly on LinkedIn. Look for Kimberly Williams.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Well, hello. We have with us today Kimberly Williams. We are so glad to have you here with us today here on Earrings Off.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I tell you, we're excited to have you. And I keep saying we, and actually it's just me. I'm solo today, folks. Teresa couldn't join us, but again, I am excited that Kimberly has joined us today. So, Kimberly, what do I do if I've gone to HR with a problem and they're being mean, they won't help me?
Unfortunately, that does happen a lot. And I think the best thing to try and figure out, if you can, is it them or is it somebody past them? Because I think it's kind of a dirty secret in HR land that they deal with a lot of retaliation. And so sometimes they're dealing with the same bully boss you might be dealing with, and they've tried to speak up and they've been threatened or they've been punched down. And if it's that category where you feel like you're dealing with an HR person who's afraid, if you're able to arm them with things that they can carry forward, that can be one way to work around it. If you get the feeling that they know it's a broken system and they are A-okay with that, I would start documenting them, because they can actually be liable in some jurisdictions for ignoring your complaint.
Yeah. And you know what? One skill that I learned early in my career, I used to be a counselor. And so in that role, in my counseling role, I would meet with clients. And of course, I had to document and I had to do reports based on what occurred. And that skill carried me into management because I would document everything. I was so, it was such a part of who I was at that time. When I would get in discussions and there was any type of question, people would say, "Oh, no, Lou, we already know you got it written down somewhere." And they wouldn't even challenge me because I had a reputation. And I think to myself, yeah, actually it is in the file. And so I can appreciate what you're saying, that you have to document what's going on. So tell us, what are some common mistakes that companies make when dealing with workplace abuses?
The number one thing I see is that there's two sets of rules. There's one for executives and there's one for everybody else.
It's sad, but it's so true, isn't it?
It is awful. And a lot of it has to do with liability, because, if you got a low ranking, say entry level employee who commits, sexual harassment, fired on the spot, they address it, they move on. But if it's your top salesperson or somebody who brings in a lot of money, or somebody that people are just afraid of having a conversation with, then they'll get them an executive coach. And it's not okay to have that kind of imbalance. I think that's the major one I see.
Yeah. And I've certainly seen some of that too. It's like you say, companies, they have to be concerned about the bottom line, but they also have to be concerned, and it's not fair, but many times executives have a lot more resources when they are challenged versus a lower level employee. And people know that.
Yeah. Oh, and it's even worse than that, because the company will put resources to protect that higher level employee. Because if they say, "Oh yeah, the CEO did that terrible thing," that's a much bigger check that they would have to write than if a low level employee did it.
Right.
On top of, public exposure, so they're looking at all of that, and it's not good.
And you know what, Kimberly, is so unfortunate, because many times employees, you're trying to do your best job, but they just don't see behind the veil
Yeah.
that's a part of it. So yeah, yeah. So what advice would you give someone who is experiencing workplace abuse?
I think you just nailed it. It's write it down. It is so, so critical to write it down. And, I actually came up with a fear not framework
Mhm.
that actually talks about some of the patterns that I see that are really successful for folks. And one, a lot of times people don't write it down or they don't report it out of fear, and for very good reason, right?
Yeah,
We've all seen horror stories of somebody who stood up and just got crushed in the process. But one
yeah,
of the things I try to really get out there is the laws are changing so quickly and they're really in favor of the employee. And so many things have moved towards jury trials where
yeah,
one discrimination claim can get hundreds of millions of dollars.
yeah,
And so there's a lot of leverage that employees have right now.
yeah.
And another really exciting thing I think that is coming up is you're starting to see a lot of conversation and bills being debated in states like Massachusetts that are addressing workplace bullying and the psychological impacts.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's significant. And I love this because if you slip and fall at your work, they write a check to fix
Yeah,
you. But if
right,
they psychologically torture you,
right, right.
what's the difference?
Yeah,
You still
yeah,
endured pain. And so I think legislators are finally catching on that both of these events are significant. And
right,
so, but the best thing you can do to protect yourself is to start writing down everything exactly as you've done.
yeah,
Note the time, the place, who was there, and
yeah,
just keep a running log of
right.
that.
Well, and it's so true. And people think, well, I don't, they don't want to take the time to do that, but that's something that's going to be critical.
Yep.
You know, when you have people offering a different perspective or a different account of the
Hmm.
same event,
Yeah,
you're going to need to be able to show, this is what happened. So, yeah. But
absolutely. And if,
isn't it though, so it's so sad though, Kimberly, when people, I've said before when I used to do trainings for new managers, and, that was my time to try to caution people about this new power that they had. And I would always say to people, everybody's really not fit for this role
mhm.
because some people are just not able to to be in a position where they're over other people, and you begin to see some very inappropriate behavior, and that's just the reality of the
Yeah.
workplace.
It
Yeah,
is. And a lot of them aren't trained, like
right,
they're really good at doing a particular job, so they put them in management, which is an entirely different skill set,
yeah,
and
right,
don't
yeah,
always thrive. You're right.
yeah, yeah. So that can be scary. So um what makes you hopeful about the future of work?
Gen Z makes me hopeful.
Is that right? Why so?
Because they will light you on fire if you abuse them. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it's amazing. I mean, I come from a different generation. I'm in my 50s. And so, I grew up at work where somebody told you what to do and you're like, okay, you didn't question
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
endured whatever you endured and you
yeah,
were miserable and you were quiet about it, but not them. And, I've seen viral videos where abusive bosses and they'll pull out their phone and they'll have 8 million views by the end of the day.
yeah. That is so true. Yeah, yeah, you're right. People are not just being quiet and accepting this. And I get particularly I get, I guess I get hopeful when I see how things have changed for women in the
Hmm.
workplace, you know?
I
And it's
agree.
certainly not perfect, but definitely they've changed for the better in many areas.
Yeah,
So I'm excited when I see that.
me
So
too.
yeah, yeah. So, what would you say are some common mistakes that HR professionals make when they are in fact dealing with workplace abuses?
I think it kind of goes back to your point about managers who weren't ready to be managers. I still think as a profession, there's not enough training in managing up.
Mhm.
Because when you really follow the thread, if you've got a toxic work culture, that starts and stops at the top. And
So true. It's
yeah,
so true. Yeah.
and it really can boil down to a few key executives. And so if you're that HR person that minds your station, that doesn't question anybody above you, that can't build that relationship, build that trust, have those difficult conversations to say, you may not like this, but this employee is calling you out and they're right and the law is on their side, and learning how to engage in that space. And I think, it's unfortunate that if you look as a field, they do a lot of training on how to engage with people, but it kind of stops at a particular level. And I think that's where it's most critically needed, that you've got to figure out how to have a voice in that room. If
Hmm.
you're the only one in there that understands this
Hmm.
is pretty serious.
Okay. Okay. Well, can you talk about then what you've seen? You say you're hopeful about Gen X, but what else have you seen that makes you hopeful
All
about
the
in HR?
Yeah, I think the changes in the laws are really, really powerful because, I've seen over my career this, oh, please be nice and fair, doesn't
Yeah.
have a lot of weight to it. But when I say, oh, here's a company that looks like ours that's just been sued for $100 million for doing something we're doing,
Right.
you're going to get a different response to that. And
Right. Right.
so the incredible activism that's come out, from Black Lives Matter, that's come
Mhm.
out from Me Too. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about dozens of new laws that everyone in management should be looking at, because it can be financially ruinous to just not treat people well anymore. And
It's
so there's a new era of accountability that's
yeah.
really exciting, I think,
Yeah,
in terms
it
of
is.
those.
You're exactly right. And I tell you, I'm pleased to see that. So, and I too am hopeful. So, those are all of the questions that I have for you today. But do you have any parting advice or words that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things that you're dealing with toxic workspaces is just fear, and it's all the way around. I know so many employees that are terrified to come forward,
Yeah, yeah,
but I can tell you, your boss is scared, the person you're complaining about is scared. A lot of times, HR is scared. Everyone is scared,
yeah.
and I try to be open about that as much as possible. Like I even, I talk frequently about having to file a complaint against my own boss. And
Mm.
this was very, very intimidating person. I already knew nobody was going to protect me. I was
Really?
convinced I was going to be fired. My hands were shaking when I wrote the email. In fact, I was,
Oh my goodness.
I was so scared to put it in writing and to send that along that I actually drafted it at my desk, saved it, ran to my car, and as I was driving out of the parking lot, I hit send on my phone.
Yeah. Well, it is scary though. It's
It is,
scary. Yeah.
and I'm not ashamed of that. I did whatever I had to do to get that out there is what I had to do. And so I try to remind people that, every one conversation has the power to change the world. You're not just doing this for yourself. If you're getting beat up at work, I guarantee you someone else is, and you're doing it for somebody else. And a lot of times the worst that you think can happen in today's world, it's changing, and that may not be that way anymore. I
Right.
thought I'd get fired and I didn't.
Mhm.
And I'm watching so many people now push through that fear, and they're getting settlements, they're
Right.
winning, they're really, and it's so unexpected when they advocate for themselves. The boss is not expecting it, but they're also surprised at their own ability to control that really scary situation.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think the more we talk about it, the more we all love and support each other on that journey and celebrate, you know pushing through that fear, making ourselves stronger,
Mhm.
the better all of us are. And the more we share the good news about the changing laws and all the protections, and being one more like on that Gen Z fire,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
that
yeah,
they're out there.
yeah.
So,
That's so true. And it's good. And it makes me hopeful as well. So, Kimberly, how can people get in touch with you?
so I'm an old fuddy duddy. I'm really just on LinkedIn, and
Okay,
so, but I like to write a lot about fear, how to document things, big
okay,
cases that I think will help people. So feel free to look for me. I can share my link with you directly, but
okay,
it's pretty easy to find. I'm just Kimberly-E-Williams,
okay.
and feel free to DM me, share your story, let me know how I can support you on your journey. I've helped a lot of people, and I think it's one of those things when you've been through something like this, it kind of makes you an evangelical, like you want to help everyone because it hurts, and it hurts. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah. So,
yeah.
okay. Well, again, thank you so much for being here with me today on Earrings Off. We certainly appreciate it and we wish you all the very best. You take care.
Thank you, you too.